So we are going to start with Human Resources and the Civil Service Commission. Hello, directors.
Hello.
We've been waiting for you. We're excited about this presentation.
We are excited to be here, and thank you for having us. Can you hear? Oh, there it goes.
Yes, there you go.
Microphones and I have a kind of a toxic relationship.
Do you have the remote?
No.
Oh, okay.
Thank you again, Chairwoman, for having us in committee. This is our 2025 operational oversight review. Our agenda will include staffing levels and vacancies, departmental overview, and initiatives, among other things. Our first slide here, just a couple of quick notes. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you to the HR team and the civil service team. They are incredible, along with all the other departments and employees that we work with. I've been here a little over a year now. Got a lay of the land and really met some wonderful people. And the city is a wonderful organization. A note here just on our organizational chart, just to bring a handful of things to your attention. So we have increased staffing in general over the past year. In conjunction with the Civil Service Department, we've added a recruiter. So the Civil Service Department has a recruiter, and we have a recruiter. They work in tandem on an assortment of projects, both to bring candidates in, of course, for city positions, but then also just try to employ Clevelanders in general. And that's one of our longstanding
Was that
initiatives.
only one position, Director?
So there's one housed in the Human Resources Department, Chairman, and then there's one in the Civil Service Department.
Okay.
So the Civil Service recruiter began first, and then ours started a couple of months later. That's Anna Marie Toth. Just Monday, yesterday, we brought on a fiscal manager, much needed. That's helping us with a variety of contracts that we deal with that affect not only our department, but all of city employees. Some major contracts, including medical. So we're really excited about that. We brought on an additional talent administrator to work with our talent management team. He works with the talent management group they work together to roll out trainings. They handle our internship and employment pipelines, among other things, and have done some really incredible work. A couple other positions of note on our organizational chart. We've brought on 2 new labor relations officers. Their primary focus is to work with the unions, attempt to resolve grievances, and just general management labor relationships. We've also brought on an additional employment investigator who handles, along with another employment investigator, EEO, workplace violence, sexual harassment claims that come in from the city. So she's been a welcome addition. A new assistant that I work with also has started recently, which has been a huge benefit. A new leave administrator who is handling pretty much all the leave issues across the city, has also picked up our unemployment compensation program and has done wonders there. So those are some of the highlights of between last year's oversight hearing and this year's oversight hearing, related to our organizational chart, if you have any questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Excuse me, our next slide is just displaying the staffing levels. So our 2024 budgeted headcount was 30. As of 9/30/24, when we originally prepared our look at the budget, it was at 25 of the 30. Currently, we have now technically 2 vacancies. For 2024, we had 32 approved positions, and for 2025, we had requested additional 2 positions for a headcount of a total of 34. So that's what we were requesting in the new budget.
What were the additional positions that you requested?
So the additional positions, one is to the chairwoman, a research and development position that will help with policy, a lot of policy work, but also just a lot of general, HR research to develop either policies, procedures, work with other departments to handle some of their internal functions as well that relate to HR. And then we still have an open front desk position. One thing that's on our organizational chart that was removed is the systems analyst. So between the last time we prepared the org chart and now in the budgetary process, or the budget process, that position's been removed.
Okay.
This is just our departmental overview, our mission statement and objectives. I know you've seen this before. I don't think you want me to go through that, but the next page, our departmental overview. This is kind of really hits the core of what we do and what we believe in. In addition to the stated departmental overview, just a couple of notes. We do work in strong partnership and collaboration with the Civil Service Department. To really try to continue to improve the experience for our employees and the citizens looking for employment in the city. We're continuing to work on standardizing and centralizing policies and procedures as well as functions across the city, try to institute best practices, really get us to a very good place, not only for the central HR department, but across the city of Cleveland. And then, just continuing to promote strong communication, collaboration with all the departments, all the appointing authorities, all of their employees in their departments. So that's a quick overview of our department. To get into some statistics, we try to pull from previous years to try to bring forth what we think that you might want to see from previous years. So the first one here is our citywide employee demographics. Some things of note, if you look to the far right, there are some breakdowns on the percentage changes. Most notably was a large uptick in employees that identify as Asian. Particularly Asian females, at almost 12%, and going down about 3/4 of the page to those that identified as non-U.S. I was really actually excited to see that because it's showing that we're bringing in more individuals that are here, one of which is in my department working from a different country on a visa, studying in the U.S. Would like to see more and more of that. And that's at a little over 27% there. And then finally, second from the last, over 20% increase in people who identify as 2 or more races. So I thought that was pretty exceptional of note. And if I'm going too fast, please let me know. I know it's probably a lot to digest. Certainly open to any questions.
Okay. Just processing all this information, so no
And
questions
please
yet.
stop me if I'm
Yeah.
moving too quickly or you have questions.
And
Please,
if any of
Chairwoman,
my
I'm
colleagues
happy.
have any question, just let me know.
The next slide here shows the employee demographics of the Human Resources Department in specifically. And then of note here on the bottom, I tried to read these out so that they were just more easily identifiable. Just showing the transition from last year, this time, to this year. This time we were at 23 staffed. We're at 32 this year. So that's our breakdown in the HR department specifically. Excuse me.
Okay, so that's your presentation. You're done with human resources, just that piece.
For the demographics, yes, Chairman.
Okay. Do you have what happened? Oh, I'm sorry. But you're still in the human resources department. We're not going to civil service yet.
No.
No. Okay.
That's
okay.
correct.
Anyone have any questions on the demographics? No. Okay. No. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. The next slide is an overview of city new hires. This year as compared to last year. At the same time we pulled the data, we had approximately a 12% increase in overall hires, new hires, between 2023 and 2024. Yeah, about 12% at 898. And then there's just a breakdown there.
Let's see. Okay.
The next slide shows the separation data from the city, and there's some important pieces here just to digest, and I've highlighted them. So last year we had a total of 995 employees separate. In this year we had 592 separate, which is a 40% decrease. So that's a substantial retention number. Also of note, in 2023 into 2024, 638 of those 995 were resignations, and that's very telling. And is comparable to this year where there's 299 resignations. Excuse me. So there's less than half resignations in this year. We had fewer retirements, and the turnover rate, also of note, last year as compared to this year. Last year, our turnover rate by percentage was about 13.8%. This year, our turnover rate is at 8.2%. So that's a substantial decrease. The public sector still trends around 20% turnover rate, approximately, on average. So here, I think it's just important to note, I feel like we're doing some good things and some right things to retain employees. I believe that some of the things that we've implemented are making employees happier, some of the policy changes that we've implemented and are continuing to. So I think that does play into that a bit.
Yes, go ahead. Councilman?
Through the chair, what is dismissed probation, dismissed CS rule, dismissed discipline? What are those three categories?
Through the chair to the councilman, those are subcategories of separation. So
Correct.
The probate, those are initially the 23 are probationary dismissals, so they failed probation.
So people are brought in for a probationary period to begin their employment, and if they don't meet expectations, they're then let go.
That's correct.
Okay, and that was 34. And what's the CS rule 8.45A wall?
Through the chair to the councilman, so that's essentially an attendance issue. So if they go AWOL, there's a progressive plan and ultimately leads to termination of employment.
Okay, and then dismissed for disciplinary issues is separate. Okay.
Correct. So that would be for cause terminations.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
And I believe last year, Director, we talked about collecting data on people that resign. Do we have that breakdown?
To the chairwoman, so we do. However, it's been very difficult to aggregate with the system that we currently have, which is one of the one of the countless reasons why we are looking so forward to the new HCM, where that can actually be put into a data set and then pulled. Unfortunately, right now, based on how separations occur through the individual appointing authorities, and it's by paper. Actually, we don't see a lot of that data, so to aggregate it is nearly impossible. Once the new HCM is in, it'll be something that we can actually pull as a data point.
Got it. I would also be interested to see the departments that all this count is tied into. Do you have that?
To the Chairwoman, we
Okay.
might be able to pull something for you on that.
Like tardiness, I'm curious to know, is that one department, is that several departments, or termination, which is pretty, high?
I'd be certainly happy to look into that to see if we can pull it.
Thank you. This is the good one here. This is the good one.
Excuse me. The next slide shows some of our department's output metrics. These are, again, things that we have kind of historically pulled based on questions that have come during this process. Certainly are welcome to pull other data at some point, should you like to see it. This in particular is pulled of note. The number of applicants we had in the past year went up substantially to over 36% increase, approximately over 9,000 additional applicants this past year. I do believe that's reflective of the increased recruitment efforts, advertising efforts, just some of the other changes that we've made to try to get the word out there and get people in to apply for positions. We did, as I mentioned earlier, had an increase in the number of people hired over last year at almost 12%. The number of PIDs that we processed went down by almost 16%.
What is PIDs?
Those are personnel action forms. That's the paperwork that we use to process actions. What is the actual?
It's, through the chair, it stands for Personal Information Document.
Information
And
document.
it contains all the employee information, regulatory information, any monetary changes, classification changes, any type of changes that impact the employee's record are done on that document.
Got it. Thank you.
To the chairwoman and committee, one of our initiatives that I'll go over in a minute is actually one of our initiatives is to make PIDs and other documents electronic. We're really trying to work on things to not only speed up the process but get rid of paper, move things quicker, and then reduce administrative time to have to process some of these things. So PIDs is one of the things that we'll be looking at in the near future to make electronic. The number of our Step 3 grievances went down substantially by nearly 27%. I think it goes to the increased communication with the unions, the labor management relationship with the unions, and the ability to resolve things at earlier stages. So I think that's been really important over the last year. Team's done a great job there. And then finally, the number of FMLA requests went down by about 22% over this past year as well. We really are trying to encourage employees to take control of their health, get preventative care, do some things to really increase their well-being. So we think part of some of the initiatives that we've had over the last year have helped that, resulting in a lower number of leaves requested.
Yes, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chairwoman. The FMLA requests seems high compared to our overall number of employees. Are those unique employees asking for FMLA leave or unique requests? So there might be multiple FMLA requests per employee through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, that's a great question. Those are unique requests.
Right.
So there could be one employee that has multiple intermittent requests, for instance.
Yeah.
And then those would also include continuous requests. Great question.
Yeah, I think it could be useful in the next iteration of this to know the number of unique employees who are requesting FMLA leave, just to get a sense of how, I think, we've talked a lot about family leave and those types of issues. So getting the sense of how widely it's used would be helpful.
Yes.
Through the chair to the team here regarding the FMLA, and also I know this had been a request to have the information specifically around what are people asking, the categories, like what are the categories of the FMLA use, and what are the varying departments, what is the time duration, like this is the information we need to actually chart to try to look for an actual pay policy, and furthermore, what has been the impact to actually departments and divisions when FMLA has taken place? Unpaid.
Director?
Unpaid FMLA has taken place.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I know that with the new HCM, that will also be data that will be far easier to aggregate. Currently, we are still using a paper process, and it's across multiple departments. So we're trying to find a way in the interim to aggregate data a little bit better. But I know that once we go to a new system, we'll be able to pull data like that. That's actually accurate. That's part of the problem.
Through the chair to the director here. So accurate. So I think we still have to have a starting place, and who better to know the impact to a department than the person who is processing from the department where this impact is happening. We have to have a starting point. We still haven't even gotten to the point to have a basic, starting point to be able to really flesh out what this conversation and what it could look like, and more importantly, what is happening to our team members here in the city of Cleveland that are getting, are utilizing FMLA.
Great point. Done? Okay. Quick question. So out of the 33,641 applicants, are we saying that only 898 were hired? Correct? Am I reading that right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That seems pretty, yeah, go ahead.
Can you, and even in this, because we hear through the chair to the director, we hear about the number of people that are applying. It would be helpful. Can you categorize what is happening? We know everybody, is it because people are not qualified for the jobs that they are having? Like, what are the buckets of the applicants from, people applying? Incomplete applications, it's a variety of things. But I think, as the chair was alluding to and said a little bit, is that how do we have all these amount of people that are applying for jobs? We're taking in a small percentage of those who are applying. Where is the mismatch, right? And just having a better idea of what that is. And then, I guess, in terms, and if you can share it in the context of HR best practices, I don't know, is there a usual standard of, qualified applicants that are attracted based on industry or a field or things of that nature? I don't know what that is, but if we could communicate that story a bit, that would be helpful. And I think just another follow-up through the chair to the director to still, I don't know if we've gotten to that point yet. We talked about hires, but what is the current time duration that it takes to get someone hired here in the city of Cleveland? And if it varies by department, like being able to share that information, because all things are not equal. So being able to talk about what is the time duration that it takes to actually get hired here in the city of Cleveland. Anecdotally, we hear it takes forever. What does that even look like? And if you all can actually share, which hence gets into other questions, are some of our systems. Again, we got to have a baseline to be able to make an informed decision.
Director?
Through the chair, I actually speak a little bit about the time to hire in the civil service presentation, but the time to hire has gone down from 179 days to 149 days. So we have made some efforts to
That's still a lot.
to decrease the time to hire. I mean, if historically speaking, I mean, it used to take 6 months to 9 months to a year to hire people. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So we've decreased the time to hire significantly just through our efforts.
Ooh, okay. Through the chair to the team, please explain why, again, why does it take this long? Please, I mean, can you all really, we're talking about 4 months, 5 months? What's 149?
Through the chair,
That's 5 months.
a part of that is contingent on the department, because they receive the names, right? And so they are responsible for interviewing. So their interviews could take anywhere from 2 to 3 months. So we can't control how long it takes once they get the names. The names are sent electronically. So it's not that we're not sending the names. And as a part of our tracking mechanism, we've actually tied an expiration date to the vacancy request, so that if they don't hire within a certain amount of time or they haven't interviewed, then the PR expires and they have to resubmit it and explain why they haven't hired.
So again, this is a level of craziness. Girl, we just put that over there. Okay. So again, that's still not explaining. Like, can you, again, the way, at least through the chair to the director and team here, can you all have a visual diagram of what is supposed to happen? And I don't know, I know we are saying that it is improved from what it used to be 9 and 12 months. But I guess the question is our hiring methodology in line with best practices of hiring when it comes to other municipal governments, for other organizations? I don't know.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, so just a couple of notes. The data related to time to hire is difficult to track, which affects the number. We try to get to an average. I guess I would call it, based upon the time frame in which a position is open. From the time it opens until to the time it's filled across the entire city. Also trying to consider some positions that remain open, that are open postings, and some other variables. In terms of the best practice question, no. We're trying to get there. We're trying to get away from a paper process to an electronic process, which is one of our initiatives that we've already kicked off, moving all of the new hire onboarding paperwork from paper to electronic through DocuSign. That's already kicked off. It should be fully implemented roughly the middle to the end of the first quarter of 2025, which is going to take away all of that individual paperwork. It also adds accountability points throughout the hiring process for people because it's actually tracked electronically from start to finish. It also sends all of the new hires all of their paperwork electronically to sign. Everything's done electronically. So what we're trying to do in terms of moving to best practices is draw out not only an effective process, but actually holding accountability to fill those positions that have been posted. The data is very hard to aggregate in our current system. It's literally almost a manual process at this point. So I can't tell you that it's 149 days. I can tell you it's reduced substantially, but I would bet it's probably far lower. And it also varies across departments. So it gets pretty tough between departments. You could have one department that moves very, very quickly and brings on people, and then another department that doesn't. And it in some respects, not artificially, but changes the time to hire for the city of Cleveland when it's not one central process. It's across each appointing authority, if that makes sense.
Right. So again, through the chair to the team here, and again, being able to present the information in a disaggregated way, right? We have all these departments, we have all these divisions. We cannot make informed decisions if we don't have the baseline. And I just, even if it's a thing of an appointing authority, as you are talking about different appointed authorities, clearly what we have is not working. It is not working. So for someone like myself who would like to offer some suggestions, not even make suggestions, just legislate difference, I am incapable of legislating difference because we are not provided with the baseline information. If it's X department that is taking 9 months to process things, there is a problem. And we need to have a very more accountability into ensuring it should not take any department 2 to 3 months to hire. Any department. And again, if you're saying that is what is happening, then absolutely, if HR should just take the lead, and again, period, like we have to empower somebody. And again, I feel like this is what all of us, again, we have deadlines. We're supposed to sign things in 45 days. We don't do our responsibility, then there is the opportunity for the other department just to make the decision. Like where are these types of systems so that things just don't go lingering forever, where, again, we are in such a level of dysfunction where it is hard to attract key talent when you realize you're not going to be taken seriously. In 5 months, somebody clearly could have 10 other opportunities. And again, I was just sharing with another department, we don't have the luxury here to just not have the best and the brightest working for the city of Cleveland. The problems are too hard. The problems that we have, that we are confronting, we need exceptionally talented people. And for exceptionally talented people, you absolutely have to compete for them and go get them. 149 days will not get us this. What we end up with, and this is no shade for people because I know we have some wonderful people. What I'm saying is we have missed the mark on getting probably some of the other talented people because of this 149 days. And if we are not working collectively to try to fix and improve this, and it can't be like, oh, Jesus. Like this is wild. This is wild. This is like, this organization. We just, and again, the point of challenge that I'm trying to work through is at times I don't even know how I can be helpful because no one actually provides substantive information to be able to make informed decision making. It's always hearsay. We don't have the information. We don't have anything. Like, I just it's bewildering.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I understand your frustration. I hear your frustration. The current systems are very difficult to get you what you're asking for.
Speak up, Mr. Chairman.
It's very difficult to pull the information that you're asking for. The systems that we have don't support it. So we're trying to get there, right? In the new human capital management system is one of the things that is going to get us the ability to get a lot of the exact data that in terms of working on the processes we are, and there's several initiatives already in place to which we're trying to work within the constraints that we currently have to try to make it quicker, make the time to hire faster. That's not to discount what you're saying or your frustration that's associated with it.
Yeah, and
I'm sure
I'm sorry, just through the chair, this is my last, and you can move on. But through the chair to the team, I think this is the other thing of what are we expecting of people here? Like, regardless if it was electronic or it's a paper, how are we evaluating the people that are doing this work? What are the expectations? What are the goals? Do we have time requirements? I don't know this, but clearly we don't. And that's the question. Do we have a standardized process and expectation for everybody that's in the hiring process and the goals that people should be meeting to improve this process of hiring? Oh, let me ask this different question. Through the chair to the director, what is the current goals or time requirements that are baked into the hiring process for everyone that is involved in hiring for the city of Cleveland?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, currently in terms of hiring standardization, we do issue guidelines, but again, each individual department hires for their own vacancies. So we're trying to implement some things to assist with that, but ultimately the hires flow through each department and their associated appointing authority because we're decentralized.
Yeah, through the director to the chair to the director, is that a best practice to let every department hire everything that they want to? Is that a best practice in hiring?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, that's legislated. I mean, each appointing authority is the hiring and firing authority for their individual department. It's not. I don't have the. That's their responsibility.
So, through the director, through the chair to the director, again, based on how it's set up, is this an HR best practice currently the way we are hiring?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I would say no.
Okay, so this is where I'm getting into. This right here. Through the chair to the director, if we know this is not an HR best practice, when do we have the conversations about the actual change in the policy to get to a best practice so we can improve hiring in the city of Cleveland? Have we had any policy converse through the chair to the director? Have we gone through or had a brainstorm policy conversation on changing the structure of HR here in the city of Cleveland? When are we scheduled to have those type of conversations so that we can actually change the policy to get to a place where we are getting to best practices in hiring here in the city of Cleveland?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, we do have those conversations fairly frequently to try to get to standardization. I don't think a policy is going to fix, though, how it's legislated. I mean, they're still responsible for their hiring and firing. So we could issue out, which we have, guidelines, associated timeframes that each thing should take. But the HR department or civil service department can't control the individual department's decision-making. I guess that's what I'm getting to. I think we're crossing paths a bit here.
No, again, I'm sorry, through the chair.
This is why we're here.
Through the chair to the director. I'm asking this question because, again, yes, it is. It is, again, if it's a policy, if in 2 weeks you didn't hire it, then you can legislate that HR will do the hiring and doing the selection for you. You can't legislate that. You could legislate whatever. And I'm saying to say that there is not a policy or we couldn't get a policy, clearly, yes, it is. It's a framework. Everybody doesn't technically need to be of a hiring authority if it's not working and it's taking too long and we're missing candidates. And we know this is not an HR best practice. So that again, and we can maybe disagree on this thing, but I really feel like that this is part of the, again, frustration is we're trying to get to solutions without having information, and this is like going in a circle. But okay, thank you. I'm sorry, and I know I exhausted
Those
my
are
time.
great points. Thank you. Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chairwoman. This is along the same lines of the distinguished gentle lady, Councilwoman House Jones. And it's the discussion that we prior had about how long it takes to bring someone on. I guess my question is, did the analytical department start working with you? Because I know that we have an analytical process in the city of Cleveland that really looks at, all the parts and pieces that make up HR and then finds a way to streamline the process.
Through the chair of the councilman, we are working with the urban analytics on attempting to try to get best data related to some of the questions that we've had here today thus far. So they have been helping us. They actually helped us as much as they could with the time to hire, I know.
And so I guess, what does that mean? Does the distinguished lady know what they've been doing? Because that tells me a little bit, but doesn't tell me nothing. It's saying something, but it's not saying anything.
Through the chair to Councilman Jones, so Urban Analytics has helped us build dashboards for civil service. I don't think they've done HR, but it's enabled us to have our operating documents electronically instead of manually. A lot of our functions are manual.
Antiquated?
Yes, and definitely.
And this has been antiquated for what, the last 30 years? Madam Chairwoman, to the distinguished lady.
I celebrated my 30-year anniversary October 10th, and quite honestly, within the last, I would say, 2 years is when we've seen significant changes. So Urban Analytics has built, we're able to electronically build our civil service exams, our duty statements, our bulletins, a lot of things that previously we had to do manually. They're automating it, but I mean, it does take time.
Right. So that's good to note that you've been here for 30 years and you've seen dramatic change in just the space of 2 years. And let me just say this, Madam Chairwoman, to you. I understand somewhat what you're saying. It took us a long time here in City Council and these notepads and stuff like this was something that I talked about 30 years ago. How do we get rid of the paper? And so it's really good that we have these types of systems in place. I guess the question now goes to the director, because you're the lead person. What will it take to have a unified department, that handles all the human resources? Because right now you're like a spider, a spider web. There's this department doing this, hiring their own people. Is this agency over here hiring its own people? Is this location over here hiring its own people? And for if you look at other corporate structures, and we, by the way, are a corporate structure, Madam Chairwoman, to the director, what are we doing to consolidate the department functionality? Because right now we're split up in so many different parts and pieces. And Madam Chairwoman, I had a situation where someone was looking to be hired in the city of Cleveland, and they applied for the position. They was told that they were, I guess they went through a process, but it took them 7 months to get onto the city of Cleveland to be hired in. I just thought that was crazy. And this was a little bit back in time. This was before you became the director over human resources. And I know that this is a daunting task because you're entering into a system that's already been established. And you're looking to try to change that system. But my colleague, Mrs. House, talked about legislation and what we on this side of the table, because we're frustrated on this side of the table, because we're not getting the services we need to have in our neighborhoods. And we're not getting quality people that we would like to see in our neighborhoods doing the work. And Madam Chairwoman, I've been in situations where I went out on the street where the workers are working and they weren't doing the work. And I had to get my entire crew out. I had to get trucks, trailers, and equipment down to show them how to do the work. And so for me, it was like, how is it that they're even working for the city and they don't know how to do work? They're working for the city and they don't even know how to drive a trailer. I almost smashed into a pole. So for me, sitting on this side of the table and being a citizen, my expectations are that if we're paying out almost $1 billion a year, we should have better services than what we're getting right now. And I know there was a time when we were paying less and getting more services in our streets. We're paying more now, and we're not getting anywhere near the quality of services that our citizens should be getting right now. And so with that being said, this is a real big issue on the bigger board. So I guess, are we doing anything to centralize our human resource department and bringing in the talent necessary, if possible? I'm not sure. I haven't evaluated your department, but bringing in the necessary talent in your department to be able to process this a lot faster and quicker.
Through the chair to the councilman, we are on our end in terms of central HR attempting to do everything we can to standardize across the city as best we can so that everybody's doing the same thing related to HR tasks. In terms of centralization, that's a whole different conversation because that goes back to one of Councilwoman House Jones's questions, which related to the hiring across the departments. We have many HR leads across the city of Cleveland. I think we're right now at about 80 or so, but they are decentralized. They report to up to and through their respective department heads across all the departments of the city.
So you're saying 80, that includes, Madam Chairwoman, to the director. Does that also include our subsidiary operations as well?
Through the chair to the councilman, that's not including our main HR department. So
it's not including the airport, Cleveland Public Power, the water department. So it's not including those. You're saying it's not including that? The 80 different departments that you just stated. Does that include
Through the
our
chair,
subsidiary operations?
That's inclusive of all our departments.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
a total 80 throughout the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one note, Councilman, though, that doesn't necessarily mean that's their only duties. So, but that's, again, part of the whole decentralized system that we're working under currently. Back to the conversation that the departments are individual in nature when it comes to many of the tasks associated with HR functions, including the hiring.
Okay. So then I guess the question I would ask, Madam Chairwoman, would be a request for information. These 80 different locations, what are their, What are their budgets, operating budgets? How many people they have in it? Do you have a breakdown of those 80 different locations? We'd like to take a look at that data, that information. The next question I would ask, Madam Chairwoman, to the director is being able to know what that amount is. What's that totality of that amount? So say, for an example, you have 80 different locations, how many people are employed there, and then what is that cost factor? How much does it cost to run those HR departments? I would like to also know, Madam Chairwoman, to the director, how many you have on your chart here, how many people do you have in this presentation, how much your department operates off of, how much you're paying out for what's your annual budget for your department? Now, this is the first time, and I'm appreciative that, Madam Chairwoman, that you're the director, because every time I ask you a question, you're always straightforward with me, so I appreciate that. But 80 different departments is quite a much.
Through the chair to the councilman, just a point of clarification, it's not 80 locations or departments, it's 80 people handling HR functions across the city of Cleveland.
Okay.
So that's all departments, divisions, that's total that handle
But
some
that doesn't
portion of
include that
HR.
doesn't include your HR department.
It does not, but our HR department handles many of the HR functions for the city. So when you start talking about complaints,
Do you have a breakdown?
grievances,
Do you have a breakdown of what it is
leaves.
that? Do you, Madam Chairwoman, to the director, do you have that written out, the breakdown of what it is that your department actually delivers in terms of human resources?
Through the chair to the councilman, I can get you a detailed breakout if you'd like what each cluster does. If you look at our organizational chart, though,
Which was
it
that?
does
It was, yeah.
show the individuals that and what the areas they cover are.
So let's finish the presentation, because you haven't finished the presentation,
Thank you, Madam
Director, right?
Chairwoman. Appreciate
Okay.
the opportunity.
Director, finish that, and then we'll move to civil service. Director could do her presentation, and then we'll do all the questions.
Okay, thank you, Chairwoman. The next slide here, this was an area that was requested last year, so included it this year. It's a breakdown of the use of paid parental leave into our second year. Just of note, 2023, at this time, we had 144 cases. This year, we have 165 cases at the same time open. I know there was some conversation yesterday, so just wanted to make mention. It does break down as requested previously by use of either men or women in the department in which they're in. So you can see overwhelmingly it's men in fire, DPU, and EMS is the majority. So there's a slight increase from last year at this time on the number of cases for PPL.
I don't see those numbers. Where's that increase? Where's that comparison?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just
Okay.
wrote down last year's presentation.
Okay.
There was 144. I apologize. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
That's fine. 144, and this year is
Yeah.
165.
Correct.
Madam Chairwoman, which you're talking about for clarification, paid parental leave demographics?
Yes.
And just for clarification, we're talking about a total of 165 people?
Correct.
All right. And Madam Chairwoman, do we have like what that cost total is?
Through the chair to the councilman, the only number we are able to pull under the current state of our systems is total use of PPL. So in terms of a breakdown, we can't currently do it in any expeditious fashion without manually by employee, but we can pull total use of PPL for a given period of time. But we don't have a way to aggregate it based on their current salary, use period, those kind of things.
So we don't have no way, Madam Chairwoman, for clarification to know how much we're spending.
Through the chair to the councilman, no. not under the current, not with the current systems that we use. When we move to the new human capital management system, we should be able to pull all of that data very easily.
I see. No further questions. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Go ahead, continue.
Finally, just the last slide here is just a list of some of our main initiatives that we either have ongoing or have completed over the course of the last year or will be continuing into the new year. The second one down from the left you'll see is human capital management system. This is by far our biggest and most important currently, which we think will help with the administration of administrative functions, and the ability to collect data will be far improved from where we are currently. I did list these. I think one thing of note is we really are trying to work on really improving many of the things that are HR and our civil service related to the city of Cleveland. Policies and procedures issued. We created a policy insight session in addition to our leads meeting that we have monthly, where we actually bring in all the leads, go through policies and procedures, really try to have them bring that back to their individual departments again is a form of standardization. Increased a lot of training that we do, anything from something basic like compliance training up to more detailed advanced employment and labor training for our HR leads that are in these individual departments. We've talked a lot about the reducing the time to hire. We really are doing everything we can in the current state to try to reduce the time to hire, streamline practices, institute accountability, and try to get us to a much better place. So there's several things that we're currently doing. One that I mentioned right now that's really having a big effect is moving to electronic. The use of electronic DocuSign versus actually paper. Some of the other things we're spending a lot of time doing related to initiatives is attempting to improve benefits and wellness for employees. That's been one of our major initiatives, along with attempting to reduce costs for the city. Our costs for healthcare are exorbitant. So whether it's a diabetes campaign, a musculoskeletal campaign, which are two of our biggest claim costs, really, again, trying to get employees to take more of an active role in their health care earlier on, which ultimately will make them healthier and then hopefully reduce some of the claims costs to the city of Cleveland, as we are self-payers. There are many of the initiatives listed here. I didn't know if there were specific ones that you might want to concentrate on. Some of the improvements that we've made, though, I think that are important to note, particularly as it relates to healthcare, is we're trying to make things more employee focused. We were able to remove the zip code restriction for CLE CleCare. We have instituted the SWORD program that helps people with musculoskeletal or pain issues. We were able to implement a broad vaccine network, which was one of the big issues that came up a few months ago, if you remember, related to individuals not having the flexibility to go where they wanted to for vaccines. We're working actively with our consultant and the carriers to try to get really the best rates that we can for healthcare, all the portions of healthcare related to an earlier part of the earlier discussion related to recruitment and trying to get people here, we did institute the CLE Total Rewards Program, which gives a full explanation of everything that the City of Cleveland has to offer a new employee, including health care.
Director,
Just
as
multitude
I
of
look at this
things.
slide, I'm just curious to know, how are these initiatives established? Like, is it based on data that you guys collect from employees that say, we need more wellness days? Or one thing that's, that I want to ask for is tuition. Every time I talk to, college kids, they're looking for someone to kind of help continue their, paying their tuition, or remote working from home, which I know is another initiative that we're interested in discussing. But I'm curious to know, who comes up with these initiatives, and are they based on surveys that are given to our employees, input that they're giving back?
To the chairwoman, so a lot of the initiatives that we pick up are based on our overall strategic initiatives, and or things that are not working well, or things that could be improved to really get to best practices.
But how do you know that they're not working well? Is it because the feedback is provided by the employee, or, okay?
Yes, and we also have done surveys related to, for instance, wellness. We did a survey not long ago. Why I mentioned earlier, we're really trying to make things more employee focused, and then also give them some decision making related to how they want to do things to improve their health. For instance, standing desks, which is an initiative that's coming out soon. Healthcare membership, or I'm sorry, gym memberships, those kind of things. But yes, we have done, also some surveys to gather data to make decisions. But in general, also just trying to institute initiatives that are HR best practices, and or based on feedback from employees as well.
Okay, so through the chair to the director, you talked about our two largest costs were diabetes and what else? Claims? Diabetes and what else?
One of the other big ones is musculoskeletal.
Okay.
Diabetes is our number one.
You said what?
Diabetes is our number one.
Number one. So, this is so intriguing. So, how would through the chair to the director, you indicated that we are moving toward a more employee-centered system where employees can have more say-so in opportunities. Have we thought about, not even thinking about it, what are the opportunities to create more, say, groupthink? And I because usually health and wellness is usually you are more prone to take on healthier habits if the environment is conducive to a healthy environment. So versus having one-offs, how is it built into this system that our work environment is set up for everybody, to be healthier, not just doing the one-offs? Again, there's scientific that just talks about group environment changes can really have a strong influence versus the one-offs.
Through the chairwoman of the councilwoman, we do some groupthink currently through our wellness section to gather feedback, but also trying to make even incremental changes to our environment. One that's undergone or we're undergoing now is providing water in City Hall. It may seem pretty basic, but actually making the ability for employees to have functional water fountains to fill water bottles, maybe instead of getting a pop. Looking at the food that's provided. Related to the diabetes, right? Make better educated choices through our diabetes campaign, where individuals are invited in to actually, discuss it. Same thing with musculoskeletal, trying to make other incremental changes like, the ability to offer standing desks, not through the ADA process. Trying to target what we know are the biggest issues for our employees related to their health care, and then try to make some targeted decisions to assist with that.
Okay, and then just a follow-up regarding this, through the chair to the director, have we explored, I guess, the opportunities to join other government entities to get, better rates when it comes to how much we are spending on our healthcare costs? Like, for example, what would it look like if we are in a system, with the county or another municipality or the state of Ohio? Like, A, have those things been explored? B, could we potentially get a better value based on the cost?
Through the chairwoman to the councilwoman, in terms of collective health care, we have discussed that with our consultant and determined it would not be the best way to get the best rates for the city, at least at this time. However, in terms of market, we've, I think, done a good job with them in terms of negotiating what we can in terms of getting our rates to stay as low as possible. But in terms of a collective, it didn't seem like a good path.
Through the chair to the director, could you explain why?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I don't remember exactly, but I do know that they look at every best available option in terms of the market, and collectives are one of those situations that they do look at to see if we can get best rates.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is the end of your presentation, Director?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move into the presentation for Civil Service Director.
I'll just leave it there.
Okay. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Through the chair, I am Rashawn Long, the Director of Civil Service, and I'm going to present our presentation for today.
Director, if you could move the microphone, yeah, just a
Sorry.
little closer. I know.
Is this better?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Do your job, Director.
Right. Okay, so you guys are familiar, through the chair, with our mission statement and objectives. In a nutshell, the job of civil service is to ensure impartial and fair hiring and promotional practices. We do that through testing. We test candidates through examinations. It may be, could be resume-based, experience-based, or through written examination. A lot of this information Director Cole already shared, so I won't belabor the point because a lot of our data overlaps. It's, identical. You go to the next one. Director Cole already talked about the demographics. This slide is our departmental overview. It shares the stats for our job postings, which would be jobs that were posted externally, the test bulletins that have been posted, how many applicants actually applied, how many people we actually hired, and then I've also provided the stats for the Department of Public Safety. Maybe talk a little bit about police, the police applicants. So Civil Service has engaged in an initiative with the Department of Public Safety where we have started to host expedited hiring events in an attempt to increase our candidate pool for patrol officer. And so far, those initiatives have proven to be very successful. We have also, City Hall has also recently been identified as a testing site for the National Testing Network, which is the exam that patrol officers are required to take and pass to be considered for employment. We received 989 applicants for fire, and the information for EMS, 489 candidates.
Councilman?
Is looking at these numbers that we have right now, I would presume that is these numbers accurate as of a snapshot of today for the police at 1,189 police officers?
Through the chair, that is applicants, that is those who have applied to
Okay.
be patrol officers.
So do we know how many we have in the police department, Madam Chairwoman?
I do not. I can provide that information. I can verify with public safety.
I see. No
Provide
further
that to you.
questions. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Councilman Howard?
I was going to wait till.
Okay, that's fine, go ahead.
Okay.
Perfect.
The next slide just illustrates our board members. We have one vacant board member. We've been trying for a while to fill this vacancy, but so far haven't been successful. For 2024, we are fully staffed. We have 12 members, so we don't have any hiring needs. Yes, go ahead. So this last slide identifies, I didn't go into depth with some of our accomplishments. I just highlighted the ones that I thought were the most important. As Director Comm mentioned, we now have a recruitment team. And through recruitment efforts, we have actually attended and hosted, well, we didn't host 100, but we've attended more than 100 hiring and recruitment events in order to attract qualified candidates. A lot of the events we did host, the major one was the City Hall Rotunda hiring event where we had 1,006 attendees. That's the first time we've ever had a hiring fair in the Rotunda. So we were very proud of that. We have significantly increased our candidate pools through recruitment efforts. Primarily, I'll talk about the Department of Public Utilities had a need for customer service representative, water pipe repair. We recruited over 300 applicants for customer service. There were about 200 for water pipe repair. So, you know, when we do our departmental assessments or if they have needs, they bring those needs to our attention, and if we need to actively recruit, then that's what we go out and do. The modernization and testing of exams. So we had a successful execution of the fire promotion, resulting in 115 promotions for the fire department. The last promotional exam was held in 2014. And then on to the next slide. So we talked about the reduction of the time to hire. As Matt mentioned, like these numbers are skewed. We have to manually extract the data. we do have some updated information that says our time to hire is down to 80 days, which cuts this number in half. So maybe I can walk us through the hiring process. That might be helpful, so you have an understanding of what actually happens.
Yeah.
Okay. So when departments have vacancies, they have to submit a personnel request, which is done in an application called NeoGov. So they submit their request to hire, it's approved. So depending on what type of position it is, meaning if it's competitive or non-competitive, depends on how we funnel the applicants. So when I say competitive, that means a scored exam, which means they tested, it's ranked according to score, and then those names are sent to the department. If it's non-competitive, then the names are just referred. Okay? So if there's a competitive exam, if there's a list, then we are able to forward the names. If there's not a list, then we have to post an exam. It's posted on our website as an announcement. People apply, and then they are tested. So that's where the time factor comes in, because our examiners have to actually physically test. It could be a written exam. It could be for Division of Water, their water pipe repair workers previously had a performance component to their exam. CEO operator, which is backhoe operators, those are performance exams. So we have to, schedule the muni lot, and we have to have people actually go out there and watch them dig or, work the backhoe or whatever it is they do, and then they're scored. So time factor involved, depending on what kind of test it is. So a couple factors come into play for that. So once the tests are graded, then the list is compiled, and then, we refer the names.
To the director or to the department?
Correct. It goes to the HR lead. So then you interview. So there's a 1 in 10. So say you only have one position, then 10 names are referred. According to the civil service rules, you have to interview all 10. So it's fair and unbiased. Everybody gets the same consideration to be considered for a position. If you have, I don't have the,
On that point, go ahead.
Yeah,
On the point.
on that, what is it, through the chair to the director, what is it about granting 10 interviews for one open position that makes the process fair?
it's through the chair, it's in the charter. That's how the charter.
I understand it's in the charter,
one
but
in 3.
why does that process lead to fair outcomes?
I can't answer that question. I didn't make that rule up. That's always how it's been. It used to be 1 in 3, and now it's 1 in 10.
3 meaning they would interview 3 people for one.
Correct. And then they changed it maybe 2000, I don't know,
Through-
14 or so. They changed it to 10. The charter was changed. There was a vote.
Through the chair to the director, and I'm sorry, this is why I'm here, Madam Chair. I'm trying to understand the hiring process in Cleveland.
I'm
I
with
appreciate you
you.
both being here. And whoever's got the answer for the question I'm asking, I'm a little bit confused by how your departments interact. I'm mostly interested in police hiring. So the police have a position open, and they need to interview 10 people. For some reason, something about interviewing 10 people is supposed to be inherently fair to those 10 people, but then they hire one of them anyway, right? And then the other 9, what happens to them? And do they stay with you? Do they go to you? What happens to the other people?
Through the chair, they remain on the list and can be considered for other vacancies, whether it be that department or another department. They remain on the list.
So say the police are hiring 100 positions, and they need to hire 1,000. They need to interview 1,000 people?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. So if they interview 10 people for 100 positions, and all 10 are fantastic, they hire one, they throw the other 9 back.
Through the chair, if they have the vacancies, they would hire all 10.
Okay. Before or after they interview 1,000 people?
It would go in order of rank. So
If they have to interview 10 people in order to hire one person, but they're hiring 100 people. Do they need to interview 1,000 unique individuals?
Through the chair, before they pick, no. Through the chair, they would do the first 10 and pick who they want and then do the next batch. They don't have to interview all 1,000 and then go pick. It's in sequence.
Okay, this still doesn't make sense.
Point of clarification, Ms. Chairwoman.
On that point,
Sure.
Councilman? Yeah.
So in the process that you're describing right now, you have these people have went through the civil service exam, Madam Chairwoman, to Mrs. Long, and they have been filed based upon rank. Can you explain what that means? Is it based upon the test scores and a reason why it's ranked a certain way?
Through the chair, that is correct. It's based on test score. And then for patrol officer, there's other factors that come into play. They have to pass the agility. They have a psychological exam. So there are other factors built into that. It's not just their rank.
Right. So then they have like maybe another 2 systems that is added onto it. Agility, the physical ability or capacity to do the work, one. And then the second one would be the psychological test. Would that be correct, Madam Chairwoman, to Mrs. Long?
Through the chair, correct, as well as background.
And their background. Okay. And on the point of background, Madam Chairwoman, to the Director for a point of information, can you provide for us, what excludes a person from being selected because of the background?
Through the chair, I cannot answer that question. That would
Okay.
be a question for public safety. They conduct their own background checks. I cannot answer that question.
Madam Chair, I'd like to reclaim my time.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead,
I appreciate that. So through the chair, so my name is John Smith, and I want to be a Cleveland police officer. And I go in to interview, and I'm not selected. I'm 1 in 10, but I'm not selected for the job. I go back into the candidate pool. I go for another position, the exact same position. As 1 in 10, I'm not selected. How many times can I go through this before I am no longer considered at all?
Through the chair, 4 times.
4 times. And through the chair, how many times can I go through that process in a year? Can I go through that process in a month? Could I go for 4 interviews in a day and be out of the system because none of those, I didn't hit any of those 4s? How quickly can those 4 interviews be exhausted?
Through the chair, I'm not sure. So they can be considered by the same department 4 times. So if it would occur in 4 days, then, and if they did them all 4 in the same day, then, I guess they would be removed.
Yeah.
I've never had that.
Well, okay,
circumstance.
so okay.
His life asked for a point.
No, I'm sorry.
Councilman?
No, I'm going to
Okay.
keep going. Let's go back to the hiring 100 people. Let's say we're trying to hire 100 police officers. We don't have to interview 1,000 unique people, but 1 in 10 when you're hiring 100 means, how does 1 in 10 translate when you're hiring 100 through the chair?
Through the chair, there's a schedule. I don't have it with me. I can certainly provide it to you on how many names you get versus how many openings you have, as well as the formula in the civil service rules. I don't have that with me.
Okay, could I get that later?
Absolutely.
I guess what I'm asking is if the top 10 people score and are considered for the job, and we'll just say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, okay? Person A is selected first. The rest go back into the pool. They're brought back for another process. Person B is selected. The rest, C through J, go back into the pool. They come back. Person C is selected. They go back, person D is selected. Persons E through J have now been rejected 4 times, but are still 6 of the top 10 scoring people. Are those people then disqualified from employment with the city?
After, yes, through the chair.
Madam Chair, this is a fundamentally, systemically broken process that discriminates against people that score high because they weren't the 1 in 10 for that particular moment's selection. That is a broken system. And I don't know if 1 in 10 or 1 in 3 was designed with good intentions at some point in the past, but if we are missing out on people, and Councilwoman House Jones is correct, we cannot afford to be missing out on good people. We need to bring good people into the city. And if we're missing out on top tier candidates because they were rejected 3 or 4 times, even though they're in the top echelon. We have to, and I don't know, if this is, we have to pull in legislation, we have to get Heiner O'Leary and Scalish on this to figure out how to make it easier for this city to hire the good people that want to work for us and stop telling them no, because sorry, you scored in the top 10, but you were number 8. We went ahead and hired number 12, and we hired number 22, and we hired number 34 because their 1 in 10 worked out for them. They flipped the coin, and they got a good, it's almost, I feel like old draft, Vietnam
Through the chair,
draft
that
stuff.
would be a civil service rule change or a charter change.
Consider civil service rule or charter change.
Correct.
Okay. Here's my next questions. So, and I appreciate this. This has got to be one of the most confounding aspects of the city since I've gotten here, and I've spent 3 years trying to figure this out, and I hate to admit that I still don't completely understand it. When a person applies for those 100 police officers, and it's a civil service position, so they have to take a test, and you grade their test, and then you send the results back to the department. The department there's a cutoff, I would imagine. Like everybody above this range qualifies for interview, and everybody below this doesn't even qualify. Would that be correct through the chair?
Through the chair, are you referencing patrol officers
Yes.
specifically? There's, I mentioned earlier, the National Testing Network. There's a specific test
Yeah.
that they have to take.
And-
I don't grade those. Those are done through the vendor.
And there is at some point a pass-fail.
Yes.
Right? It's okay. So everyone who passes, do you know, through the chair to the director, I'm sorry, chief or director?
Director.
Director. Do you know how many people passed the civil service exam in this past year for patrol officer 1, or for whatever the lowest level of hiring that the police do is? How many people passed that civil service exam?
You're talking about the NTN test? The
Whatever
written
it is
exam?
whatever it is that the police officers take.
I'll provide that to you. I don't know if I have the correct number, but I can provide it to
Low
you.
hundreds, medium hundreds, high hundreds, thousands?
Medium, I would say.
Medium hundreds, 300, 400, 500, somewhere like that? 500? Okay. So about 500 passed. And that is before, through the chair, they get the scrub over from the HR department of the police, who do psychological exams and background checks internally to the police department after they get your test results back.
Through the chair, correct.
Okay. And through the chair, I believe, then to Human Resources, do the police then tell you how many applicants they have to invite to academy, or do they make that decision at the police department level? Are you involved at all after they come from civil service and the police do their background check? If they want to move into academy, are you involved at all in any of that?
Through the chair to the councilman, no.
No.
No, it's
Acad-
all internal. It's internal to the process, the review and selection process.
so
with 1
if-
in 10's being last.
If the city were to send 500 candidates to the police department and say, these people all passed the civil service exam, through the chair, is there anything else either of you have to do before the process becomes entirely up to the management of the police department itself?
Through the chair, the only thing that we do is schedule the psychological exams and
At the request of the department or on your own?
No, we do that
And the drug test.
automatically.
And through the chair, do you do those before or after you send? Well, through the chair, wouldn't that be before you send the qualified people to them, the people that passed?
We do it after.
You do it
After
after.
the NTN, after the exam.
So they take the exam, they pass, and then you do another layer.
Correct.
And was that what netted us 500 people? After that, they were still 500? Or was that before? Did the 500 then get whittled down? Or
Through the
was
chair,
that?
correct.
Okay, then
Yes.
how many got past that? And qualified, passed the psychological exam and civil service, that then went over to the police and said, this is your eligible pool?
So that would be probably right around, would you say, a couple hundred after the psych exams?
I'd say about 100 on average.
Yeah.
How? About 100? So we eliminated about 400 people through the psych exam?
To-
Do you want to come up to the table?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's not
we're here for operations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, no, that's not just the psych exam.
Yeah.
The psych exam and the physical are at the end of the process. It would be through background check, which could include excluding crimes,
Yeah, sure.
It
No.
could be,
There are lots of reasons why somebody shouldn't be considered for a
Right.
position like that.
Can you introduce yourself and then you could answer
Yes.
Councilman's question?
So, I'm, through the chair, I apologize, this is my first time at the table.
No
so-
sweat.
Thank you. I am Leanne Guzman. I am a project manager in civil service. And I work not exclusively, but very closely with the police with their hiring process. And we have tried to open up a lot of line of communication to make this process a lot smoother. So from the beginning, we have once a applicant applies to be a patrol officer, we as civil service send them a voucher to take the NTN test. So we pay $65 per applicant that takes the test. So once they take that test, they are ranked based off of their video score. There's 3 components to the exam that they have to complete and pass in order to be considered. They're ranked based off of their video score, which gives them a couple different scenarios that they have to go through, like entry-level scenarios, to see where their mindset is at. So once they pass that, and we add them to the eligible list that gets approved through our commission, police has asked that we actually invite their entire list to attend the agility. So that could be 500-600 people that we reach out to constantly to attend their agility. So once they attend the agility, if they attend the agility, that's a pass or fail. They do get a retake a week later, and then those are the folks that move on to the psychological exam, background, and the medical, which all run concurrent to save time. So we kind of do them all at once.
Okay. And so if 500 people started this process, in other words, they passed the paper test, and so they go into the agility, followed up by the psych, background, and medical, how many people are getting through that and then going back to the police and saying, okay, here's your whittled down pool, that's your academy eligibility?
Through the chair, if we started with 500, I would say we end up with 77
Okay.
to be considered at the table. Now, the last part of the process for police that we don't really have too much knowledge on is their selection process, where they sit at a table, they have everybody's file that can be considered.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
And they go around the table, and that's how they make their selections.
Yeah. Okay. And at what point does 1 in 10 start?
So the 1 in 10 through the chair, the 1 in 10s is technically their selection process.
So when the 75 get there. So, and this is what I don't understand either. These 75 people have already passed the civil service exam, which is basically an intelligence test, right? It's a question about your understanding of
Through
government.
the chair, yes.
And how civics work, right? They've gone through an agility. They've gone through a psych. They've gone through a background check. For good reasons, right? There's plenty of reasons why somebody should not be a police officer. They've gone through medical, and they've gotten past all of these, and everybody said, cool. And so then you get down to about 75, and okay, so we're weeding out 80+%. That seems like a very high standard, and we should have good high standards. And go ahead, I don't want to.
I apologize, through the chair. Those 77, so at the time of the 1 in 10 selection where
Yeah.
police sit at the table, the psychological and medical is unknown to them. They don't know whether these folks have passed. That is not a part of their criteria to eliminate yet. So once they make their selections, they send the selections down to civil service, and I let them know who passed and who failed, which ones. So, for example, this process for the December class that is starting on the 16th, I want to say 78 went for selections, and we're down to 47 for the academy.
Okay. And that's after. Okay. And is that 78 turned into 47 because of their selection process, or because they said, hey, we got 78, and you came back and said, whoa, no, wait, you only got 47?
So from their selections, I do,
Did they select 78 that you whittled down to 47, or did you select 78 that they whittled down to 47?
through the chair, they selected 77, and I took them down to 47.
Okay, okay, that's what I need to know, okay. And that was based on other exams, so we lose about another 40%.
Through the chair, I would say we lose, at each stage, we lose probably 45%.
Okay. 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 And so 1 in 10 then kicks in when there's 47 left. Or no, I'm sorry, the 77 was the 1 in 10 process that got you the 77.
Through the chair, I cannot speak of how many people they, so the 77 that they selected was out of maybe 86. So my apologies, I believe I may have gotten confused
Okay.
or confused you.
No, it's a very confusing subject.
So, okay, through the chair, those that pass the background stage are those that go to the table. Sometimes I am unaware of those that have failed the back or that they've removed already. So they are still going for the psych. I still have their report.
Okay.
So I still have to notify these candidates of what their status is, whether they passed or failed. So those that go to the table for that selected may have been like 86 went to the table. They selected 77. We went down to 47.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to ask that we review this charter process in the coming years. It seems like times have changed, and maybe we could put enough gumballs in the gumball machine that we could throw our hands in blindly and just pick one because there are enough gumballs in there. But if we don't have enough people applying for these positions and we have the shortages that we have, any arbitrary dismissal of qualified candidates is to the detriment of the citizens of Cleveland. And we need to address that and make sure that qualified people that want to serve the city are given the opportunity to do that. And that we don't have arbitrary dismissal processes that doesn't make sense. We're too far behind. Like I can't even get a police officer to sit outside after school at the high school because they don't have an extra officer to sit outside the school during dismissal. They just don't have enough bodies in cars. There's other things going on, and we can't do that. And it's leading to, we have all the known problems downtown with people coming downtown to enjoy a game or a play and coming out with busted out windows. And we need a little bit more presence in the city, and we need to hire up some of these officers to be able to do the work that our citizens expect and deserve. And to me, it seems like part of this is going to be a legislative issue if the 1 in 10 is causing qualified people that want to do this work to be dismissed arbitrarily. That is something that we should fix. Yeah. And we should look at that very, very sincerely and make sure that we get this done. I know next year's an election year, but I think this would be a very good issue for us to address. And let's handle it. Let's do our job. And I appreciate you taking the time to walk me through that because I'll probably go back and look at this footage again. It is almost mind-bogglingly how hard it is to get hired in a city that needs to hire people. It's a frustrating issue, and city jobs are good jobs, and a lot of city workers are happy with their employment. It's a good place to work, and it's long-term, and you can get good benefits, and it seems like we are sort of handicapping ourselves. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Great line of questions. And Councilman's life?
Thank you for your great line of questions, but I'm going to keep it going.
Okay.
Just quickly, Councilman Harsh, I believe that the justification given for the 1 in 10 versus the 1 in 3 say that candidate number 8 speaks Spanish and there's a need or to have linguistic diversity in a department, but you wouldn't get that individual if it was just 1 in 3. If you do 1 in 10, you're able to get a broader scope. That's the idea. You're able to get further down the list to get more candidates, especially if you're trying to meet our own diversity goals, which are not legally formal, but we know they're there, but also knowing that people bring different skill sets. Maybe a firefighter worked in a different community and had experience, doing like apartment high rises, but they're number 9. Like you wouldn't get them if in the 1 in 3. So that's
Through the chair, why not hire them all? Why not hire them all? If we need all of them, hire them all.
Hold on, Councilman.
Through the chair.
Thank you. Councilman Slife, would you allow Councilman Harsh to chime in?
go ahead.
Madam Chair, on that point,
Yes, Councilman Harsh.
through the chair to the councilman, why not hire them all? Why would we even have to choose between the top 10 candidates and number 8 who speaks Spanish and came in number 8? Good for that person. Hire them all.
Councilman Slife.
I agree. And which is my next question to Director Long. Could you clarify, you had said 4 reviews. I had thought it was 7 reviews. Is there a difference between, is it 4 after you've taken the civil service test? Is it 7 reviews during the departmental selection? Is there some nuance where some are 1 in 4, some are 1 in 7? I just want to make sure that I'm operating on this correct facts.
Let me go back and verify. I could be wrong. I thought maybe
Okay.
I'm thinking about the 1 in 3, but I'll confirm.
Whether it's 1 in 4, 1 in 7. Thank you for that. I think
Okay.
that it highlights the same issue. Whereas the way I've understood it, and this is just to my colleagues how I've understood it, and I brought a whole bunch of markers if you want me to do the marker thing, but I think that Councilman Harsh got us to where we needed to be. If you're number 8 on the list and they hired numbers 1 through 7, and it's supposing it's 7 reviews, 8 now is technically still on the list, but they're given over a passed over status. So let's say we hire another round of people from the same active list. The next time the department calls for civil service to give a list of eligible candidates, number 8 will not be sent over because they have been passed over. And until the list were to expire and they were to take a subsequent test and get a new ranking, they would no longer be under consideration unless I've been told the director of the hiring authority, most often the director of the department, sends a notice to civil service essentially requesting that person's status be toggled from passed over to active. And I say that because I have made the request that I think as a courtesy at the very least, any Cleveland resident who is passed over from a process purely by statistics is possible should be readmitted to the list with active status. If there's a fundamental flaw that they have, they're still not going to get hired in a secondary round. But if it was just a statistical anomaly, then that allows them to have a point of reconsideration. Because we give residency points, the top of the list is weighted towards residents, so the people getting passed over first end up being residents. And if you look at some of the classes being hired, especially in public safety, they are overwhelmingly comprising of non-Cleveland residents when there are Cleveland residents who have a passed over status. So I just that makes me uncomfortable as well. And I've done a lot of research on this, and I think that if we were to make a concerted effort to just hire Cleveland, I've spoke about this before. I was very shocked, but happy to be shocked by the presence of residents and especially diverse residents in initial applications. If we were able to take those ratios and turn that into the class, no one would have a concern, I think, about diversity and the hiring of residents within public safety, but something's happening along the way, and we're ending up hiring, in many cases, non-diverse non-residents, which I don't think is anyone's goal. So I share that all to say that I agree that there's a lot to unpack here. I don't begrudge Director Long or civil service, as that she's noted, this is how the charters dictated. I think the question is really, how is the system working and how should it be working? One more question before I kind of get to that, though, and I'm sorry, remind me your name.
Leanne
Guzman, thank you. To Ms. Guzman, through the chair, you had noted that the psychological portion, is it that it is not under consideration during the departmental selection, or that it may not be under consideration just because the information hasn't been processed and given to them yet?
Through the chair, I've been told that they do not want to know at that time of what the status is of the psychological reports. So the information is held until after.
Thank you. That's useful information and maybe a bit clarifying, because I have heard from individuals who were offered extended an offer of employment that was subsequently rescinded because of the psychological evaluation, which is I will hold my question of why that is policy to the hiring department, because that seems to be their decision that they are making. I will say, and just one more thing on my worldview, the other thing that I think we need to do a deep dive on, and I know we focus very often on safety, and I'm guilty of that as well, but I think that this is applicable across the entire city of Cleveland, but especially with the Division of Police, because we talk about it so much. I believe this council needs to get more clarity on what disqualifies someone from being a police officer, because I've heard some pretty, in my opinion, goofy stuff. And and I'll say this on the record: if somebody had an open container in college, I don't think that should disqualify them from being a Cleveland Division of Police. In fact, I would say that if we are holding applicants to some high standard that is apparently very few people can achieve, I think that makes it more difficult for people to be actual police officers in a real world environment where they're dealing with humans that may not be in the best point of their life. And I would love for an officer to be able to say to the 15-year-old who got in trouble, hey, you're in trouble now. I got in trouble once, and look at me, I turned it around. You know, I became a police officer. You can turn it around. And if we're not even able to do that ourselves and give people the reconciliation that I think in many cases they're deserving, what message are we giving to our own youth about the one mistake that they made, and suggesting that has now guided the rest of their life? And what sort of desperation and defeat does that create in an individual? So I passionately believe that we are just being too strict. Nobody wants, addicts and others that are dealing with, mental health challenges that are severe and things to become, we understand that this is not a job that everybody is going to be able to do physically, emotionally, psychologically, but I worry that we've course corrected too far, and that is why we have so few people being hired by the department, not by this group. So getting off of that high horse, I guess my question for the department is, as I see it, the civil service hires for general fund departments. It also hires for enterprise fund departments, or not hires, but manages the hiring process. And what I hear from those maybe could be boiled down into different problems. I hear from, my sense is that the general fund, you go through this very fair, organized process only for the ultimate hiring by the department to end up being subjective. You gave a list of 10 that was very fairly came, but if I'm the hiring authority, I can still pick and choose based on my own bias or who I know and things like that off of the list of 10. And that seems to subvert the intentions of having a fair civil service process. So that's kind of what I feel from the general fund side. From the enterprise fund, which our enterprises are meant to operate more akin to a private run business that's self-sustaining. It's an inability to quickly hire people on as they are competing in an open market. So people are not able to bear the 149-day average process, and by the time we get to them, they've already been hired up by something else. I guess to that end, it causes me to just pause and think, is civil service the right process? It dates back to the 1930s. I will admit I'm not entirely sure if you look at cities across the country, who uses civil service, who uses a different process, how civil service structures vary. Would you be able to speculate, if you were able to say, are there industry best practices? Like if we're at 149 days average hire, is the goal to be at 100? Is the average nationwide to be more or less than that? Are there kind of best practice communities that have a really robust, fair, equitable hiring process that is doing so in a way that's not sacrificing, like that's not causing what we feel often are delays? Is there, if I were to do research on this, where would you guide me to start, essentially?
Through the chair, we have done some research with different cities, and I won't say it's best practice, but the goal would definitely be 60 to 90 days, actually lower than that if possible. That's the goal.
Thank you. And if we're able to come up with a list of communities, I'd love to just sit down with staff, Brooke, and almost do like a compare and contrast of Cleveland, City A, City B, City C, and understand how our process is deficient or maybe better than others. My last question, because I could honestly talk about this all day. When you had mentioned having to set up a test out in the Muni lot, is that a typical process in a private sector? If the job requires a CDL and I have a CDL, are you testing my driving skills, or are you comfortable that I have a CDL and that is proof in and of itself that I'm able to drive the truck? I guess I'm trying to understand, are we spending money on testing people and incurring delays when they should be able to prove through their resume or other certifications that they're able to do the job on day one already?
Through the chair, that particular performance exam was requested by the department. We built it based upon what the department requested.
Okay.
So going a little bit further, we have been performing job assessments, meeting with the departments to review their classifications to see what is outdated. Like, for instance, just speaking about the classifications in general, like someone talked about one of the classifications talked about a coal bin or ash hopper or something. I don't even know what that is. But like it's antiquated, so we archived it. And this was some of the discussion with the pay band ordinance, because as we eliminate positions that are outdated or antiquated, they're not being removed from the pay band ordinance. So that's a part of a bigger project. We've created classifications, we've removed them. It's based on what the need is. Like, it's a part of our modernization to review the titles to make sure that they fit the department and what the function actually is or what the task is. The department can request to remove a performance component. They can request to add it. Like, we build it if there's an existing test on how they want it to be.
Thank you. And I'll dwell more on this and I'll put my thoughts into writing, but I guess just as a random example, I genuinely do believe that some of the smartest people in this country work in food service. It's a tasking job. It requires the ability to do multiple things at the same time, to kind of arrange task orders to make sure that things come out at the same time. So I do think it's a mentally demanding job, and that the people who do it are intelligent, but I'm not. If our process is to ask someone in that specific role who may not be making a lot of money as is to take time off for a test to demonstrate these sort of subjective skills when we're able to just know that they're maybe inclined to have it already because they've been doing this for 10 years and their employer says that they're a great employee, are we overthinking it, or are we creating burdens that are keeping people in a lower paying job instead of getting them into a union job with benefits at the city of Cleveland simply because our own process is administratively burdensome? These are the things that I think about, and I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater and just say that we should fully eradicate civil service, but I am inclined to think that the current system being over 90, reformed since, but originating 90 some years ago, is worth doing a deep dive on to understand how it can be kind of jolted back to life to meet the needs of our workforce today, which are that, we are desperately in need of workers, and there's people out there that desperately need jobs, but we fail to make this marriage. So I'll leave it there because, like I said, I could talk all day.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilwoman, so.
Thank you, Councilman Slade. Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I enjoyed Councilman Slythe and Councilman Harsh's questions, because these are questions that we were digging deep in a long time ago. I don't even want a date to talk about it. I know that we talked about it so long ago in the caucus meetings, and I think back in that time period, we had former president of Cleveland City Council, George Forbes, even come in that period of time to talk about civil service and the discussions that councils in the past have talked about the fairness of hiring. And we know that there has been systematic racism in hiring in the city of Cleveland. At that particular time, Madam Chairwoman, the issue is making sure that in these two departments, one which is the fire department and the other one which is the police department, that they hire minorities. At that particular period of time, Madam Chairwoman, to Mrs. Long, the issue was, how do we break the systematic system that was in place? And during those periods of time, Madam Chairwoman, to Mrs. Long and for the council's hearing, there was discussions about how there was a practice where people internally, Madam Chairwoman, to the director, knew about when they would be hiring police officers as well as fire officials, and they were able to they had their systems in place where they actually trained the folks ahead of time for these various tests. And when it was made available to the public, there was only a 30-day cycle to turn around the public to being able to participate when others had an advanced knowledge as far out as a year in terms of this. And then the next question and challenge was that there was not, Madam Chairwoman, a practice here at least, where we had a consistency in terms of bringing in people. And I think that's why we have some of the problems we have right now, where we would have a system of at least twice a year, we're looking for applicants for the fire department as well as applicants for the police department, so that it would be fair and that everyone knew about it at the same time. And so what we got is a lopsided system even now today. So it leads me to this question right now, because this is important to talk about this subject as well as to get into. But before we dig deep into that right now, let me just pause for a moment, Madam Chairwoman, to the director and Mrs. Long and to the Human Resource Department. I really appreciate the fact of this presentation that we have right here in front of us. I think that you guys are doing a great job compared to what we have had to deal with in the past. And it is my hope, Madam Chairwoman, to the group that is assembled here, that we have a fair process that does hire in competent, capable candidates without the discrimination that we have seen in the past, and in some instances continue to see today. And so, but sitting here on this side looking at the operational review, I guess the question would be, in my mind at least, because you guys have been, especially you, Mrs. Long, you have been here for quite some time. So it would be nice, Madam Chairwoman, if we had like maybe a little bit more of a deeper dive, because institutional memory, and I think that the city is blessed to have people who've been there, done that, been here, still knows it, got all this background knowledge to help us along the way. What do we need to do? And this is why we're here talking about the operational piece, and we know of the successes that you've had so far, which is good. And we know that we want to reduce the time frame down to hiring people in. And I think on average, Madam Chairwoman, to Mrs. Long, you said 60 to 90 days. Can you elaborate on that in the respecter of, is this 60 to 90 days for all hires across, or is this just dealing with the civil service portion of it?
Through the chair, I think that we should be able to achieve 60 to 90 days for all hires.
And then I would like, Madam Chairwoman, to hear the aspirations of Mrs. Long in terms of what she believes should be put in place to have a better department. I can sit here at the end of this table, Madam Chairwoman, and talk all day long while I'm blue in the face about human resources, but the truth of the matter, I don't have any background in human resources. So it would be good to know what is the best practices for having a strong human resource department, and then having the people who've been here for a long time to really talk about how we can put in place processes that will get us where we need to go. And I know that a lot of times, a lot of people work from one administration to the next administration, and they're more or less in a position where they just do as they are told. So I'm not that type of person that believes in just giving people do what I like to hear what your perspective is and your opinion. And if you have any, can you share those with me right now, if you are at liberty? If not, I understand.
So through the chair, I just want to say a couple things. So the first thing I would like to talk about are employment barriers, something that I am actually passionate about. Looking at let's start with the bulletins, and I can use like my own sons are in their 30s now. I can use them as an example. You know, everyone is on their phone, they're on Twitter or whatever they're on, but nobody wants to see a 4-page application. Like I've watched people, like they pull up the application and they're like, oh my God, this is 4 pages, who's doing that? So one of the things we've tried to do is condense the bulletins and the application down. It's down to 2 pages. A lot of the information in it is required, but I mean, it's something that we did. It may seem small, but I mean, it was helpful. The second thing that I've been looking at, a lot of I don't know if you've ever read the duty statement. If you would like me to send it to you, I can. But the duty statement contains all of the classifications within the city of Cleveland that are classified. And every single classification says high school diploma required, and then it says bachelor's degree and, you know, whatever else it says. But a lot of the concern that I've received is that if you have a bachelor's degree, why do you need to request a high school diploma? And the point of that is, if it says it in the description and we're testing for it, then you have to present it. Now, I know where my high school diploma is. That's kind of funny, but a lot of people don't. So I'm working to have that removed. I mean, it's a barrier, as small as it may seem, but I mean, it's a pain. You know, you have to go to the Board of Education and go through this, you know, long process to present a high school diploma when, if you have your bachelor's degree, why do you need to do that? It doesn't make any sense. So that's one thing. The other thing that I've been working on, and I've actually been working with Local 100, is to remove the high school diploma requirement for some positions because it's just not needed. And so they were very supportive. So that's an initiative that I'm working on to go through some of these classifications. And through the chair, Councilman Jones may remember long ago, some positions didn't require a high school diploma. So that will open some doors up for some people. And lastly, I am, or I should say Civil Services, working on a career ladder project. And The three that are developed are for engineering, human resources, and a project management tier, where it would be similar to an apprenticeship program, but you would have an entry-level program, a mid-level, position, entry-level position, then a mid-level position, then one in between, and then, the management position. Trying to iron out the logistics of how that will flow, what the money look like, what the cost will be. But there are things in motion that we're trying to put in place to remove barriers. I mean, I understand very well.
Could I chime in just for a minute?
Madam Chairwoman, I would yield to the distinguished lady, Stephanie House Jones.
Thank you so much. So can you repeat those 3 areas again for the career ladder?
For engineering, human resources, and project management.
Just through the chair to the director, have you, and this is just a point because we just passed a legislation regarding IT, you might want to consider also including IT, because I know that the new chief information technology, we literally just passed, what's today, Tuesday? Yeah,
Yes.
Yesterday. So yesterday, we just passed a legislation regarding this pilot IT program, so that might be something that you want to include in there. That's all. Thank you.
Through the chair, the other issue is that Director Cole spoke in length about is that our operating systems are all disjointed. We have Kronos, we have NeoGov, we have ADP. I was here with the implementation of ADP. When we implemented it, we didn't have all the pieces. So over the years, all you've done is patch it. So it doesn't interface with some things. So, when Director Cole mentions that he can't pull the data, we can't. It's manual. We can, and even when we pull it manually, when you're going through this system to that system to the other, it's really our best guess. We aren't able to talk about employee turnover because everything is done, it's decentralized. We can't pull the data. We can pull it from the departments, but I mean, God only knows how long that will take. It'll take time, and then, the accuracy is a problem. We can't verify whether it's accurate or not. So this is where the human capital management initiative comes into play. Like it's critical that we have that. We have everything in one system. So, this is a part of the reason that I'm engaging in some of the job assessments and cleanups, because we don't want to dump any bad or antiquated data into a brand new system. It doesn't make any sense to do that. So, and lastly, I would say, I know that Director Cole is working on standardization of human resources policies and practices. Everything is right now decentralized, so a part of that will be centralization, so that there is some control over, how things are administered, and the documents are uniform, the process is uniform. We know who's doing what, where. That's something that's critical that has to happen, but when you're talking about such a large entity, you have to do it in phases, or, I don't know, pilot it, I'm not sure, but that would be my.
I just want to take the time to thank you, Director, for being so honest. It's one of the things that, I've been asking for now 2.5 decades. And it was and is and continues to be a centralization of the Department of Human Resources. We will not be efficient as a $1.8 to $2 billion operation here, including subsidiary operations, if we don't have a centralized department. And it sounds like you have been operating and over 100 and over 80 different people doing different aspects in different spaces and parts of the city. Is that correct? Because those 80 people, they're not all in your department, are they?
Through the chair, that is correct. They're spread out in the departments, Department of Public Works, Utilities, Port, And then through the chair, the general fund departments.
So my suggestion would be, if you can take it back to the administration and for the council to take a look at, is how we can save the city money. All of these people who are in all of these different locations and doing all of the same things that you're functioned to do is a waste of resources. And it has been the case for quite some time. And Madam Chairwoman, if I could, we take a deeper dive, and I've asked for how much would this, how much is this costing us to have all these different people do all of these various different functions. If we could get that information, and then I want to request too, because I know you should have this information, and I've requested it, and I still haven't gotten it from previous administrations. And the request is, and this is where we get down to the nitty-gritty of discrimination and racial discrimination in particular, is knowing what are all of the disqualifying factors that you disqualify people in the city of Cleveland, in the areas of safety, and just in general. If you have a general list, I'm not sure if you have a general list, but if you do have a general list, and let me ask the question, do you have a general list on situations that disqualify people from being employed at the city of Cleveland?
Through the chair, you're asking for public safety specifically?
Well, I know public safety has its own list, and I know also that fire department has its own list. Is that correct, Madam Chairwoman, to Mrs. Long?
Through the chair, I don't know if.
To the distinguished lady at the other end, can anyone answer for me?
Yes. Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Go ahead, say it again so they can hear you.
Through the chair, that is correct. I believe public safety for police and fire, they have their own disqualifiers, separate than the minimum qualifications that are set forth for patrol officers.
So, Madam Chairwoman, the request is, and this goes back just not only in this administration, but what are the disqualifying factors for the safety department, and that would include EMS, the fire department, and the police department, because those are the things that we've labored over for years on this council. And the second issue, Madam Chairwoman, would be what are the other general disqualifying factors for in general that you may work off of, just so it gives me an opportunity to see that. And the reason why I asked that, Madam Chairwoman, because I had a young man that came to my office and while I was talking to him, he had actually came into the office because he wanted to be a firefighter. And he was huge. When I talk about he was like Superman body, he had the Superman body. And as I continued to talk to him, he had passed the physical test. He had also had passed at high marks the IQ portion of the test. And so he ranked all the way up there. So he was like at the very top almost. And then he went through the proposition of the psychological test. And when he went through the psychological test, they disqualified him. So he was very upset with the fact that he was disqualified. As he was sitting in my office, Madam Chairwoman, to the director, I asked him, I says, well, is there any kind of an opportunity where you can retake the test? And he says, no. They told me that the only way I could deal with getting into the system again would be to spend my own $1,200 and take my own test all over again. So I said, are you kidding me? He says, yeah. He says, that's the only recourse that they gave me. So I called over to the director of the department and asked him what was going on. With this particular case, he explained all of, that they had changed over to a new group that would be doing the psychological testing this year in the hopes and proposition that they have a fair process. And so they disqualified him, so he had to come out of his pocket $1,200. I asked him, my first question, I said, how bad do you want this job? And he says, I really want this job. And I just thought that he was an incredible young man. To me, it seems like whatever he put his mind to, he could accomplish and achieve. That's how brilliantly smart he was, sitting there talking to me, and how articulate he was. And he had his father and his mother in the room with me. And with saying all of that, Madam Chairwoman, what we found later on was troubling to me, because he didn't get a chance, after he'd done all of this, he was disqualified on the psychological test, so he couldn't be set in the classroom. So I guess he couldn't be seated to be a part or to participate in the next process of becoming a firefighter. Then, and he was an African American, by the way. And as I'm sitting there, I saw some information on him that his parents was talking about, over the years, And I remembered him being a part of the food banks, feeding the people, being engaged in the neighborhood, and involved in very positive, life-changing volunteer situations that I thought that, he's a great human being. And so we found out later, Madam Chairwoman, that there was another candidate who happened to be white. I had talked about the issue on the floor of Cleveland City Council. And then the information came to me from an anonymous source that there was another candidate who happened to be white, had great criteria as well, and he failed also the psychological test, but he was seated into the classroom. He was seated to go to the next level. And so then I called up the director at the time and said, hey, how is this possible? How is it that the civil service person who's there would knowingly say to an African American applicant that you failed the psychological test, but you can't move on to the next level, and yet we have the white applicant, and by the way, the white applicant didn't even live in the city, that he could move on to the next process. And so I made a big stinker about it. And it was internal. I didn't make it public. And it was changed. And so they allowed him to spend his own money. He had to deal with, I guess, a listing of psychological organizations or that would qualify with the city to accept it as a counter to the initial test. And then he was initially allowed to go on and sit in the class later on after getting that test done. So to me, Madam Chairwoman, having a list of what those disqualifying factors are significantly important. And then the next question is, Madam Chairwoman, is what is the percentage of firefighters, police officers, or EMS workers who are African American currently? Because it's my understanding that we've even lost ground. So it's like we have less now, less African Americans in the police department, the fire department, and the EMS department has dropped so significantly that we are looking at numbers that we have never seen, matching all the way back to 2000. So what are those numbers? Do we know? Madam Chairwoman, to Mrs. Long or to the director?
Through the chair, I do not have that available at this time, but I can provide it to you. You're asking for the ethnicity for current employees, correct?
No, I'm asking for the ethnicity of the fire department, the police. This has been a long issue. Fire department, the police department, the EMS. We know that these departments, at least the fire department and the police department, has good salaries.
Through the chair, you're asking for current employees, not applicants, correct?
Current employees, not applicants.
Okay.
And then if you got applicants, we'll take a look at the applicants too, and how are we doing, and why are we doing so bad? I don't know if our department takes an assessment of that issue to give us a better idea, in terms of why our numbers we're losing ground. And to the distinguished lady at the end, I really appreciate your comments. Do you have any add-on to this? In terms of what those percentages may be?
Through the chair, not off the top of my head, but I do want to assure you that going forward with the psychological evaluations, all applicants that receive a failing report do have the option to file an appeal and be heard from the commission with or without an outside evaluation. They are told that they can submit anything that they would like to on their behalf, whether it be a character reference or just a brief summary of their feelings about what happened, and that they will be heard.
Has that new policy, or how long has that been in place? Because this particular application, the distinguished gentleman I'm talking about didn't have that option. He was told that that was it. And then when I dug into my foot into the ground on the issue, then they said, okay, well then he got some recourse. He can go get another psychological evaluation. And this word, and I'm not sure if the director was on the same page as you, because at that time he was a new director, and this is just pretty much what he communicated to the applicant.
Through the chair, I cannot speak about that. I've only been with civil service around a year now.
Okay.
Through the chair, in the rules, it specifically states that
There's recourse.
through the chair, it specifically speaks to the applicant or the candidate having 10 days within receipt of receiving notice. They have the choice to request an appeal through the commission. As long as they file that appeal within the 10 days, I add them to the agenda. They are allowed to come and review their psychological report so they can have a better understanding of it. And then they're also given the next steps of what could happen after and before.
So during your period of time, how many applicants have come and took that option, right? And then they had it reversed?
Through the chair, there's only been 3 appeals, none of which have been overturned throughout my year.
I see. So Madam Chairwoman, I have a lot of other questions to ask, but I just want to say overall, I just think that, I've seen progress in the department, and I would love to see those days reduced even further than what they are. It sounds like to me, capping it all off, is that we need to have a real centralized computer system that gives the Human Resources Department the kind of tools that they need to have in order to have and to function at the level of dealing with a corporate organization of almost $2 billion. And now the next question would be, I would presume, have we at some point realized what that system is and how much it's going to cost us to put it in place and implement it?
Through the chair of the councilman, we are already in the process of implementing it. It's Workday, and it is expected to be launched in January of 2026.
And then finally, Madam Chairwoman, thank you for your liberty of allowing me the opportunity to speak. How long, is this a system that we can really say is a good system because it's somewhere else, and it's been tested, and it's been tried, it's been proven? Because I've sat here at this table, Madam Chairwoman, I've supported millions and millions and millions of dollars being put into technology and having all kinds of problems, and we're still not functioning at the level we would have hoped to.
Through the chair of the councilman, Workday is a premier company and system, and the integrator is Accenture. That's another top-of-the-line integrator of these systems. Workday is tried and true. It's used internationally, including private and public sector.
Okay,
So
great.
it's an outstanding system.
And then, Madam Chairwoman, did you put that together? Who put that? Was it a team approach? How did we get to that system?
Through the chair of the councilman, it started before I arrived.
Okay.
However, it was done through an open RFP system, and then all the usual vetting mechanisms were used to ultimately come to the selection. But it's a world-class system, and will have a significant impact on cities' operations.
Okay. Madam Chairwoman, thank you so much. I think that this was a very productive meeting. I appreciate your leadership as the chairwoman, and I look forward to continue working with improving the situation here in the Human Resources Department. And I'm certainly open to any tools that we need to give them to make sure that they're successful so we can reduce these days and have a fair process for all of the citizens of the city of Cleveland. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And I want to thank my colleagues for being here today. I will tell you for the first time, I understand the 1 through 10 system. And my brother's a firefighter, so he tried to explain that to me over and over again. But I do want to thank both directors, and Ms. Guzman, you added a lot of value to this conversation, so I want to thank you all for your leadership. While I see a lot of challenges, I also see great opportunity where council could help, the department. So we'll follow up with a meeting conversation, and I would suggest, Councilman Jones, for you to meet with Director Long and see if, to get your questions answered. So thank you all. Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful holiday if we don't see each other before
as well.
then.
Thank you.
And this meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.